Right in the heart of the Karoo semi-desert region of South Africa, you will find an entire town where every single resident is white. We are talking about the Orania town. At first glance, it may seem like just another rural South African community, but very quickly, its surprising uniqueness becomes very obvious. You see, when the racist apartheid system finally ended about 30 years ago, a group of Afrikaner folk weren't ready to integrate totally with the new Rainbow Nation. Instead, they decided to carve out their own separate reality, a town reserved exclusively for those of Dutch and French Huguenot descent. And that's how Orania, as we know it today, was born. Today, this self-segregated clan has grown from just a few families to a booming population of more than 2,500 people over the past 3 decades. So what's life really like in this town, purposefully cut off from the racial diversity surrounding it? Let's find out in this video.
We are from Africa, that's why we call ourselves Afrikaners. We want to remain here. We also want to retain our identity. Now, to retain one's identity is not a racist impulse. We wanted to retain our identity against the English or the British imperialism also, and they're even whiter than we are, much whiter.
Driving through Orania's streets, it doesn't take long to realize this place operates in a totally different reality than the rest of South Africa. Everywhere you look, there's a white face, and white faces only. On your left, you'll find a white man in blue overalls methodically mopping the floors of the local convenience store. Down the road, another white resident in a safety vest is using a leaf blower to clear the sidewalks of debris. Scenes that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago under apartheid's draconian racist laws. You see, in the old days, cheap black labor was ruthlessly exploited for all the hard, menial jobs that white folks didn't want to do themselves. But not in Orania. Here, the townspeople have completely eradicated that horrific colonial legacy. Whether it's the gardeners manicuring the urban flower beds, or the workers at the agricultural processing plant, every single job is being done by white Afrikaners.
Orania has just become part of the South African landscape. It's just there. It's not. There are some who would like to fight it if they could, but it's just a given.
And that uniform presence of whiteness doesn't stop there. It extends to the Dutch-style buildings, the neat rows of homes with manicured gardens, the kids pedaling bikes up and down the streets. It's like you've suddenly found yourself in a town in Europe. But no, you are actually still in South Africa, just that you cannot find any blacks in this town. Back in the early 90s, as South Africa was transitioning to democracy, a group of Afrikaner families decided they wanted no part in integration. Among them was Hendrik Verwoerd's own son-in-law, the prime minister who literally designed apartheid's brutal segregation policies.
Accepting that there are differences between people. But while these differences exist, and you have to acknowledge them, at the same time, you can live together, aid one another, but that it can best be done when you act as good neighbors always do.
Together, they pooled their resources and bought up 8,000 hectares of land along the Orange River. Using an old apartheid-era statute about self-determination as their legal basis, they established Orania as a town explicitly for Afrikaners only. As Winan Boshoff, one of the original Orania settlers, who also happens to be Verwoerd's grandson, explained, the Afrikaners dreamed up and created Orania to have a place of their own, like the African tribes or clans. We wanted a place of cultural reference that belonged solely to us. And to be honest, these people have really worked actively towards this vision over the decades. Orania has its own bank, its own currency called the Ora, which matches the South African rand, and even its own municipal flag with the old apartheid-era colours. Some might see this as a desperate, even shameful attempt to resuscitate the racist injustices of the past. However, the people of Orania firmly believe they have a right to self-determination and preserve their identity, just like any other ethnic group. So, yes, it is safe to say there is no racist undertone in this case. Of course, Orania's existence as a whites-only town has naturally sparked strong criticism and controversy both within South Africa and internationally. When people first learn about this community, the shocking reaction is usually, wow, these people must be extremely racist to want to completely exclude any non-white residents. In Joost Strijdam's typical response, when people see there are no black workers here doing the gardening, cleaning, farm labor, the jobs blacks were once exploited for, their first instinct is to call us racist. But actually, we've rejected those dehumanizing colonial labor practices. However, we cannot deny that Orania seems focused on preserving certain aspects of Afrikaner history and cultural identity that have become taboo in the new South Africa. In fact, right at the entrance, an open-air museum proudly displays a collection of old apartheid-era statues and monuments that were removed and discarded by other municipalities after 1994. According to Sandile Swana, an expert on governance in South Africa, creating private towns like Orania isn't unusual. You'll see similar cases around the world. But what makes Orania so specific is they've explicitly chosen ethnic origin and culture as the sole criteria for residency. At the end of the day, no matter how the residents rationalize it, Orania remains a harsh reminder of South Africa's racist foundations. An exciting irony in the history of this town is that there is actually a particular house in Orania that carries special significance. You see, back in 1995, barely a year after becoming South Africa's first black president, Nelson Mandela himself paid a visit to this place. At that time, Orania was modest and unassuming. Mandela sat down for tea with none other than Betsy Verwoerd, the 94-year-old widow of the very man who architected the brutal system of apartheid that Mandela had helped dismantle.
I hope you understand that there is still a lot of anger and bitterness about the experiences which our people have had in the past. And it is not easy, especially over 14 months, to change the mindsets and the feelings of people.
So, why did Mandela make this journey to the heart of Afrikaner separatism? Those close to him say he was absolutely committed to the seemingly impossible task of reconciling South Africa's deeply divided people. He believed in pragmatically engaging even his staunchest ideological adversaries to establish dialogue and understanding. Fast forward nearly 30 years, but this town still remains defiantly set apart from Mandela's vision of a unified, integrated rainbow nation. So whether you view it as racist preservation from the apartheid era or a legitimate exercise of cultural self-determination and identity preservation, one thing is clear: the very existence of a place like Orania shows just how formidable reconciliation remains in post-apartheid South Africa. An entire all-white town that seems to have removed itself from that noble vision altogether. We have now come to the end of this video. Don't hesitate to share your respectful thoughts on the town of Orania in the comments. While at it, don't forget to smash the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you will be among the first to know when next we publish another mind-blowing video like this one. Bye for now, and see you in the next one.